Joining us now, Adam Kennedy. Adam is the White House Deputy Director of Communications and Deputy Assistant to the President of the United States. He's live. He's in D.C. The President getting ready for his bilateral press conference with President Macron of France. And then also the President heading back today. He'll be back in Washington around 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Adam, great to have you with us.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Adam, you know, we follow this every day. We talk about the fake news and the lying legacy media. But I've got to tell you, Adam, I've never seen anything like what I saw over the past 72 hours. Since the president got on a plane heading to Europe for the G7, the lying fake news media has just made up stuff. I mean, it isn't even biased now. They just make up stuff. For instance, they started out by saying all the G7 members are upset at the United States, and everybody was tense. False. Everybody is demanding that the president solve the China trade dispute. False. The president said he regrets putting the additional tariffs on China. False. I mean, now they're just making up stuff, Adam.
Well, you know, I think it shows just how desperate they've become, and I think the president talked about this over the weekend as well. They're the ones destroying their own credibility when they start running with stories without getting any confirmation, without getting anything on the record. They're essentially telling the American people, here's this rumor we heard, what do you think about it, without actually trying to do their job, which is get to the heart of the matter.
I mean, it was a disgusting display of lying in the media. And even the president tweeted it out. He said that people in Europe were asking him, you know, why does the media hate America so much? Why do they want it to fail? And it's because they want this president to fail. That's it. So now, look, this is only an appetizer, I think, Adam, to what we're going to get over the next 20 months heading up to this election.
I think we, as we saw in the last election, the media is going to do whatever is possible, whatever is within their power to try to undermine the president. You know, I don't think they don't think that he is right for the job, and they do everything possible to make sure the world knows that.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Adam Kennedy with us, White House Deputy Director of Communications. Adam, let me just ask you this straight out. Going forward, part of your job is to get the story out of the White House straight, right? I mean, that's the job of the communications department, is to get the president's policies, what he's doing, his thoughts behind it, to the American people. Besides the president's Twitter handle, how do you get the truth out?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. I think in the past what we've seen is with Democrats, they usually have a friendlier media, and so they use journalists and the media to try to get their spin and their story out. What we like to do is to follow the president's lead and speak directly to the American people. So along with the president's Twitter, the president talks to journalists and is on TV almost every day, particularly when he travels. The president also likes to make sure that we're not just going to the same old sources of information. So we use Twitter, we send out press releases, we talk to people who go on TV and make sure they're fully armed and aware of where the president is, where we're coming from, and how we see the situation going forward. And I think really what you see here is part of the media's lashing out against the president is that they're frustrated that they're not getting the same kind of cozy treatment that they got in their past administrations. But really, we believe, and the president believes, that our job is to inform the American people, not to inform a half dozen or 24 journalists here at the White House.
Well, look, that's your position, and I think that's the right way to go. But look, the president gives plenty of media access, right? I mean, now what he's doing is, he'll come back on the South Lawn tonight at 8:05. That's open press, basically. Maybe he'll give a statement, maybe he isn't. But every time he walks out to go on Marine One, he'll stop there and talk to the media and answer whatever questions they want. But they still spin the thing and can't get the truth out. So it's disturbing to me. I think I've been in journalism for a long time, and my industry has just gone upside down. There's no more reporting of news nationally. There's some of it locally, Adam, but nationally it is all about pursuing a particular agenda, and it's kind of sick, and it's a disservice, because if you were just following the national media, you would have thought the president's G7 summit was a complete disaster, right? Because that's the way they've been presenting it. Yet it was unbelievably successful. He's got a bilateral trade deal going with the United Kingdom. That's in the works. He said that he's talked to the Chinese 2 times on the phone. That's in the works. He's only going to take a deal that makes sense for the U.S. He was able to negotiate a tremendous, we understand, trade deal now with Japan. And that's only for starters. He's talked to India. He's talked with our European partners about sharing the burden of the number of prisoners we have in Guantanamo. None of that has been accurate.
Well, absolutely, and I think you bring up a good point with the Japan trade deal. Again, this is another situation where everybody in the media, everybody who is his political opponent, always says what he's trying to do is impossible, and then every time it comes through and he gets a huge success for the United States. He's opening $7 billion of markets for American goods, particularly agricultural goods. So I think what the G7 is really showing is that this is a president who does things differently and achieves great results because of it. The idea that the same failed solutions of the past that got us into a situation where our economy was stagnating, where the middle class wasn't growing, that we should keep on repeating those, as I just think completely baffling to me, and I think that's why the president isn't following that script.
All right, Adam, you've got your work cut out for you in the next 20 months before this election. I know you're not involved in the politics of it, but you've got to get the president's message out in a way that is honest for the American people to see it. You're not going to be able to do that through these fake news outlets out there that just lie to you. I mean, it started when he got on the plane saying that everybody in the G7, that everybody was tense that he was going. Like, they just made that up. Such, when it's from our standpoint, sitting back like I do every day on the radio, and we actually know what's going on because we get it directly from the White House, and then you read the news and it's the exact opposite of reality. It's frustrating. I can discern that because I'm getting access. Other people are not able to do that. That's the risk here, right?
Well, I think you pointed out earlier when the president talks to the cameras before getting on Marine One or when he returns. And actually, I think it's an important part of what the president is doing. Yes, these might be unfriendly outlets, but it means they are carrying the president's direct words for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes longer, and they then air that footage throughout the day. So the American people are able to cut through the headlines, cut through the spin, and see the president's actual words throughout the day. And again, this is all part of the strategy of speaking directly to the American people, not leaking to reporters, giving special access to this person or that person, but really making sure the American people have a light into the president's thinking and into what we're doing here at the White House. And I think that's going to be critical in terms of how we move forward.
Well, that's what you're going to have to do. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're with Adam Kennedy, live at the White House Deputy Director of Communications and Deputy Assistant to the President. Adam, I want to get to another topic. I had Mercedes Schlapp on Friday, and she talked about the 11 days that Anthony Scaramucci was the communications director at the White House. And she referred to it as his reign of terror, basically, and detailed the things that were said inappropriate. She said that her female staff there felt threatened, that they were harassed constantly. He threatened to fire them. And the beat goes on. This whole thing with Anthony Scaramucci now discrediting the president. He was never a supporter of the president at the beginning. As you know, he called them names and was for one of the other candidates. Gets in there, he's there 10 and a half days, he gets fired. Unheard of. What's the deal with this guy?
I've been at the White House since day one, and I was there for Scaramucci's tenure here in the comms department. It was one of the most bizarre, strangest moments of my entire career to see somebody who seemed unhinged even at the time. It was almost like that weird kid you go to class with who's always demanding attention. I mean, it just did not make sense. And I think you're exactly right. He was never a supporter of the president, and I think it really shows just how opportunistic he was and how opportunistic he is being now. This is a person who sold a book, who has done everything possible on the one hand to say the president's great, and then as soon as it's no longer profitable for him, as soon as he's no longer making money doing that, he switches and all of a sudden starts attacking the president so he can make money that way. I mean, the idea that the same networks that were making fun of him, that were attacking him, that were belittling him, are now hosting him as some sort of expert, whether it be MSNBC, CNN, whoever else, as some sort of credible source, and that he's now taking their money, just shows how bizarre the situation is and how, to be frank, just how blatant it is that for both parties, whether it's the network, whether it's Scaramucci, this is about making money. And this isn't about telling the truth. And when it comes to the President of the United States, it really is disgusting to see.
Mercedes said that she called it again his reign of terror. And she said that he was very harassing to female employees in the communications department at the White House during his 10.5 days before General Kelly fired him. Did you see any of that when you were there?
I certainly saw what I would consider to be inappropriate behavior, both to female staff members and really to all staff members.
Mm-hmm.
I think for every single meeting we had with him, he would essentially threaten to fire everybody, and he considered that to be appropriate behavior. This is not somebody who I think had any real idea of how to manage or how to lead a team or how to be a leader, and I think that was completely obvious to anybody who was paying attention.
Unbelievable. So this guy that was there 10.5 days that got fired is now being heralded as some person with great insight to the president. He was never even really friends with the president, and he was only there 10.5 days. So, I mean, how does that...
Well,
right?
It's only 10.5 days if you include the weekend, by the way.
If you take out the weekends, it's what? 10.5 minus 4, right? So it's 6.5 days.
Yeah, we basically had 6 days with him. He was fired on the 6th day. Unbelievable.
6.5 days at the White House, fired, and now he's leading the effort to discredit the president. Well, Joe Walsh. Well, we can't talk about politics now, so I'm just going to scrap that. We'll stay with the policy because you are a White House employee, not part of the campaign. So I'm going to stay out of that. Let's get to how the president. How do you guys move forward now in being able to get your message out to America on something like USMC, which we just had the Secretary of Agriculture on, Sonny Perdue, who said that he's aghast that he can't get USMCA out of the House because it's going to directly and immediate benefit U.S. farmers, U.S. dairy farmers, U.S. timber growers. It's going to immediately benefit them. So it's going to be beneficial to Americans. And you guys can't get it out of the House because the Democrats don't want to see the president get a win on trade.
And I think this is the part of the job that becomes a little frustrating because for years, really since NAFTA was first signed, we had large segments of the Democratic Party, whether it's in Congress, whether it's their voters, saying, hey, this isn't working for us, we need it to change. The president came along, has replaced it with a great deal, USMCA, which opens up markets both in Mexico and Canada for our farmers, for our automakers, which is going to make it so that American labor is no longer being taken advantage of or exploited, so that businesses are no longer being moved across the border. He gets all this deal, fantastic deal. Nobody thought he was able to do it, by the way. I remember during the negotiations, everybody said, oh, this is never going to happen. The idea that we could replace NAFTA is insane. He gets this fantastic deal, achieves all these goals, and also the Democrats, who have been calling for this to happen, by the way, for well over 2 decades now, all of a sudden start going, well, that's not exactly what we mean. Maybe we should hold off on this. I mean, it's rank partisan politics that refuses to put the American people first. And the president has spoken about this. We're going to continue to speak about this. There is an easy way that we can help American farmers, American businesses, and American workers in this country, and that's to immediately pass USMCA so the president can sign it.
Well, look, and just moments ago in France, President Trump met with Prime Minister Modi of India at the G7 summit, and we understand that both of the leaders discussed ways to broaden their strategic partnership and greatly increase trade between the United States and India. And President Trump also reaffirmed the need for dialogue between India and Pakistan to reduce tensions of these two nuclear powers over Kashmir and acknowledge India's role as a partner in trying to solve Afghanistan. So he's continuing to work these. But it's no secret, Adam, right, that the president prefers bilateral trade agreements rather than these globalist type things like TPP and NAFTA and others. He prefers to do business with countries directly so that the U.S. has a better control over the situation. That shouldn't be a shocker to anybody because he campaigned on that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what the president really wants at the end of the day is free, fair, and reciprocal trade. Mm-hmm. And the best way to do that is through bilateral trade agreements. Two countries sitting down and talking out their differences so that we can open up markets and really so the American people can benefit. Mm-hmm. Now, the idea that the president is somehow against trade or is anti-trade is this thing that the media likes to bat around because he's taken a strong stance against some of the abusive practices of some of our trading partners. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, this is the president who has opened up countries to American beef, American agriculture, so our farmers have more access, mm-hmm. who has renegotiated NAFTA, who, as we just talked about, has a framework of a deal with Japan, who is finally holding China accountable, and yet somehow this is being shown as a negative against him. And I think that's just how out of touch some people are. This president wants trade. He's supportive of trade, but he wants free, fair, reciprocal trade, not trade deals where the American worker is the one who's paying the price.
Well, and look, the president said that he had 2 phone calls in the past several days or day with high-ranking officials in China. He said where they're talking very seriously. And he also just, as we said, did the deal with Japan. So all of this is coming together. And now the president, so everybody knows, at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, in about 2 minutes, he'll be on stage with the president of France, Macron, in a bilateral press conference. Adam Kennedy, thanks for being with us, man. Appreciate the insight. And keep fighting to get out your message. And one of the best ways to get it out, unfettered, truthfully, is come on my radio show. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. We appreciate the opportunity.
Adam Kennedy, White House Deputy Director, Communications Deputy Assistant to the President.